Okay, this is the last segment on Isaiah 53 as it describes me and how I am the only man who has ever been able to interpret it properly. It was written that way. God can be very crafty with his writing. And he made sure, though, he had backup. The backup is the book of Ezekiel. He, too, went through the fire of refinement. God's boot camp for prophets. He takes people who weren't born to be prophets. He says nobody is. But there's certain characteristics I like, and then I change it. Now, I've already gone over that, and where we ended up was with the following part of verse 53:10. Which I have conveniently lost. You're going to have to bear with me a moment. And I'm going to, there was like a couple sentences left, but I'm going to read it from the top. And so there'll be a little overlap between the previous video and this one. I'm up to 3. This will be number 4. Because apparently my memory cards only hold a half an hour. Okay. The primary purpose of verse 10 is not to test the devotion. It is to make certain that the animal sacrificial atonement and worship laws of the Torah cannot be used for the man described, as the Christians do anyway, with the human sacrifice of Jesus. It is the only reason God would crush a man with disease to make him be his servant. You see, what he does is, this man's blemished. This man's afflicted by God. He's disfigured. And that's not Jesus Christ. He cannot be this man, and God wrote it that way. Apparently, the Christians do not know how to read and comprehend the Jewish Bible. They took it as their own and called it an Old Testament, which means New Covenant. They even took your New Covenant of Jeremiah 31 of sin forgiveness and said the new covenant is now Jesus. I think they just make everything up. I have come to note that religious people do make quite a bit of things up, including your rabbis. Messianic era came from Rambam. World exaltation of the Jews came from Rambam. King Moshiach gathers his kingdom. Rambam. None of which is in the Hebrew Bible. They're out there teaching man's word over God's word. And I'll say it again. I've been with him for 15 years, 24/7. His spirit lit upon me and entered me, and God is in his spirit. Just repeating, Isaiah 11 could just have well read, the spirit of God and God lit upon and entered the twig of the shoot of the stump of Jesse. But he didn't. He wanted me to be able to explain it. Didn't want anybody to be able to figure it out. All of your prophets, Jewish people, every one of them, if they repeat God's words, or he talks through them or writes through them, they're men and divine beings. Not only are they prophets, they're men and divine beings. Because wherever God's presence is, so is the angel of his presence. And that whose body is not human form and wings. It's the Spirit of God. Your spirit's always with you too. The angel of his presence is always with him. So when they alight upon and enter a man, and that's when you can hear God's words. Basically, he manipulates your mind so that you can hear conversation and feel you're part of it. That you're having a conversation with God. But it's a manipulation of the mind. It's not through the ear. Now, he can make you feel that it's through the ear, and he often does that with me. Okay, I'm going to carry on. You cannot offer an animal blemished or with defects. So God blemishes and disfigures the man. Now this is God's words. That I was kind of ad-libbing. No man would refuse God, and God does not need a man's permission to make him a servant. He is God. In the book of Ezekiel, God had his spirit seize Ezekiel and made him suitable for the purposes of being a prophet to the Assyrian Babylon exile and go through his fire of refinement. He didn't have to make a deal with me. It's crafty writing. There's reasons for all of it. The offering for guilt. We're going to get into that in more detail one day. God knew what the Christians, the Gentiles who become Christians, would do with the words wounded, punished, maltreated, bruised, crushed, and chastised. And they did. He drew them in. He knew he had to have it. He had to have the Gentiles know his law. And he knew what was coming one day. He knows everything from the beginning to end. The world and humanity is his reality TV. He may as well have written the script. He's always right. But he knew he had to have a Christian country like America. Because without that, Germany wins, people. Germany wins. And he knows these things. That probably many of you saying, why didn't he come save us? And God will tell you, why didn't you come back? I gave you land to take care of, and y'all run willy-nilly all over Europe. But anything, everything's come together, and that's why God, because one of the covenants he brings when Moshiach's here, the covenant of friendship. He's in a very good mood. He's excited about getting back to Israel. He's excited about living with the Jewish people again, just as he lived among the Israelites, the tents of the Israelites. You know, they would say God would walk by the tents, this and that. You know who's really walking by? Moses. But God and the angel of his presence have lit upon and entered Moses. And there's 3 or 4 different clear verses in the Torah that can show you that. Where I go, I mean, he may as well say I'm walking down in the old city. But he's not walking down. He's just in me and I'm walking down. 3 persons in one body. A man in divine beings. Also known as a host of the Lord's host. And just find one of my videos on that. There's 3 verses in Joshua. And it includes the captain of the Lord's host. And you'll find out what I'm talking about. And how to identify men and human, divine beings. But every prophet was a man in divine beings. And it's another thing, of course, Judaism doesn't know. God didn't want you to know. He wants me to teach it to you. I'm the only teacher he recognizes. He has dismissed before him every rabbi, every shepherd on the face of the earth. And the only way they can come out of it is to help him straighten Judaism out, bring it to the modern era, get it out of antiquity. This is not Torah. Everything with the Torah is just fine. But the ball's been dropped too many times. Too many times people like Rambam have been listened to as though he's God. He's not. Makes a lot of mistakes. The Christians took the book God gave his children, the Jewish people, and called it their own, saying that Jesus, the unblemished Lamb of God, unblemished Lamb, cannot be 53. Unblemished Lamb of God is described by Isaiah 53. No, the man is blemished, with defects, receives long life, sees his children, and makes the many righteous by his knowledge. not by his blood. Isaiah 53 is a snare for the day of the Lord. Again, he needed the Gentiles to have a religion, but he's setting it up that he's now going to take it down. We're going to knock the cornerstones out of Christianity. It is going to be hard for a parent after my life's over and we get done all the things we're going to do. It's going to be hard for a parent to teach Jesus to the children because they're going to keep saying, no, everybody figured it out. It was Keith. You watch. That's how God tells it to me anyway. Isaiah 53 is a snare for the day of the Lord and God's wrath on the Christians from Isaiah 51. Passed through them from his people in Isaiah 51. All of Christianity is based on Isaiah 53. He cannot be Messiah or Moshiach or anointed one from Isaiah 11 because he's not from the stump of Jesse. He's from the banished, fallen ancestral tree of the kings of Judah. That's not the stump. The fallen tree, what was left? A stump. And that's where Moshiach comes from. Can't be 11, can't be 53, he's unblemished. The man of 53 is blemished. In this day of the Lord, in the appearance of the true righteous servant of God, the blemished and disfigured prophet of God, which would be me, the cornerstones of the churches and the Vatican will be removed, and the end of Christianity will begin. These are God's words. Again, I was ad-libbing, and I'm not going to try to say everything twice, but this is so important, and we're almost done. Isaiah 53, verse 11. Out of his anguish he shall see it. He shall enjoy it to the full to his devotion by his knowledge. My righteous servant makes the many righteous. It is their punishment that he bears. Okay, what is this out of his anguish? Out of his anguish, he shall see it. Well, this wasn't Jesus, because out of his anguish, he was dead. He shall enjoy it to the full to his devotion. The anguish is the fire of refinement, people, that ends when the man is suitable for God's purpose that might prosper. Return to his temple. Malachi 3. This is also a reference to Isaiah 11:2, where one of the attributes of the Spirit that alights upon the Anointed One is a spirit of devotion and reverence for the Lord. 53:12. Assuredly, I will give him the many as his portion. That would be the believers. People who will help me. I had nothing. He took me from society 15 years ago. I had to stop practicing law. And I'm going to need help across the board until I get on my feet. Hopefully these books will get published, royalties will come in, then things will start getting better. I'm going to need help getting them published. Basically, I need somebody who says, you need to publish this. It's got 2 covenants in it that go into effect, and we believe he is who he says he is. And somebody, a rabbi who wants to come correct and teach the books so that he gets to the scroll of remembrance and gets to see the Jewish heaven. Somebody like that with a name. Telling his publisher, no, you just got to do this. This is happening. This is real. I've been with the guy. That kind of thing. I will give him the many as his portion. He will receive the multitude as his spoil. So the small amount of believers in the beginning becomes a multitude. For he exposed himself to death. Jesus did not expose himself to death. He died. That's not exposure. No, it's a crushing sickness, crushed by disease, that exposes you to death. With me, cancer. I've told you that story. And he was numbered among the sinners. Saying the man is a sinner. You ought to hear I'm not going to get into it, but how the Christians explain it, that's still Jesus, but he's not a sinner. Whereas he bore the guilt of the many, and I've told you how that is cagey writing. I bore the guilt. Well, I went through the fire of refinement, and then I go and make them righteous. And their guilt goes away. There's no vicarious suffering in my analysis and commentary on Isaiah 53. And made intercession for sinners. That's the same thing. I will give him the many as his portion. He received the multitude as the spoil. Those who believe in me and are made righteous are the many who become a multitude. For he exposed himself to death. These are now God's words. God's righteous servant is crushed with disease that exposes him to death, but give him long life. 20 years ago, they gave me 1 month. And seen a doctor since. Never treated. The lung cancer, it was colon cancer, metastasized to lung cancer, and no hope. No hope. And was numbered among the sinners. God's righteous servant will have been a sinner. I was not a religious man. I mentioned I was an atheist close to 50 years, and that's with God orchestrating my life. He wanted a blank slate. He didn't want me to have any preconceived notions or ideas or beliefs, because it's very hard to shake those with religious people. And that's what he got. Again, in the book he dictated, The Life of God's Righteous Servant, is chapter 7 when he first speaks to me. It's a good chapter to read. It's interesting. Jesus is said to be without sin. And like a rabbi was teaching at synagogues when he was 12. I don't know where that was supposed to go. I'm going to have to reproof this book. Okay, that's it. We'll probably put this out, these 4 videos. I'll join them as one. It'll probably be about close to an hour and a half, hour and 20. And there's one out there right now. It's part of Jews for Judaism, Tovia Sanger, false teachers, saying that Isaiah 53 is Israel. And they are. And they deluded deceitfully thousands of people, and it has hurt God, because I can't get anywhere. Despised, held of no account. That's how people think about me. If I tell them, look, I have proofs. Why don't you just read the proofs? You just heard one of them. My ability to explain 53. Moses got 3 proofs. The Israelites in Egypt believed him. The slaves, they followed him. 3 proofs. All of which could have been just little tricks. And I have 3 proofs. And it begins with the books. It shows me to be the prophet like Moses. My knowledge of heaven shows me to be Elijah. Moshiach, the anointed one. Well, the Spirit entered me, and God is in the Spirit. And then how I fit some of these, 53:10, crushed with disease, exposed to death, but given long life. Well, I've told you my story. If people won't check it out, I'll sign off, and you can get my medical records. They'll show you. Terminal. And then you can't find another record on me. That's 20 years. After a death sentence. That's how you know I fit 53:10, and you just go and find somebody else that's going to have the same story. It's either me, Jewish people, or you're never going to see your Moshiach. I'm sure, nobody really knows what to expect. But here it is, and I'm just a man, except that everything I do and say and write, even my physical movements, are controlled by God Himself. Now that's comforting. Now, the Christians may be able to go around saying, the God we worship became a man. Well, God would never become a man. I got this for you. I know him too well. You know, this is God shaking my head while he's shaking his. No, it's not going to happen. He can talk to me, through me, people. On some of these videos, you might be able to catch it. But I'll get more into that. That's my knowledge of heaven, because in heaven you don't have a mind, and he has to be the information of your mind. He is, and by teaching me about heaven, he has become the information of my mind. Difference is he's known me to birth, and he's got everything. He doesn't forget anything. Whereas with most of the Jews, he knows them just by looking at them. But he doesn't know the particulars. And that's why Jewish heaven is going to just be based on Judaism, Jews, Jew history, Jew food, cooking Jew food, and this and that. And there's a great entertainment, which I've already mentioned before. You get to see what happened to you, Jewish people. He showed me the beginning of the creation of mankind, when the land was barren, there was no life. And then there was life. And he said, I'm going to choose another. I said, you're not going to change it up? He said, no, this is perfectly what I want. And you're going to be able to see, there'll be different names and this and that, different things will happen, but it's going to be the evolution of the Jewish people before you. It's very interesting. Just sit out on your balcony and I'm pretty sure you'll feel like you're in body in heaven. You're not going to feel like you're a spirit, which cannot be seen, or necessarily an angel. You won't have wings, I can promise you that, but you're considered angels. You're pure of body. Okay, that's all I'm going to do. Be sure to pass this video to anybody and everybody you can. It's so important. And I've got, utter destruction or never defeated again. I mean, that's what all the rabbis should be saying. And where's Elijah? We have to find Elijah. He clears the way. And he's the messenger with the covenant of sin forgiveness, which you have to have for clearing the way. Because you become a holy seed. Just like the exiles became a holy seed, built a second temple, and now we got another one. Not on Mount Zion, the Temple Mount, but on Mount Zion. Thanks for listening.